Happy Friday, everyone. All right. I hope you're doing well out there in internet land. We welcome you back to another episode of Mom at Home on this Friday. As you can see, I'm back at the Museum of Making Music, primarily for the reason that I am going to be here tonight with Mr. Michael Kennedy. We have a virtual concert happening at the Museum of Making Music tonight. If you don't have your tickets, feel free to go and head to our website, museumofmakingmusic.org. Grab a ticket, and you'll get an immediate email confirmation giving you a private link to that concert. So, and if you are aware or not aware, we are doing a massive renovation right now. So the Museum of Making Music is going to be closed until February 2nd, 2021. And already the process is underway. If you were to visit the museum right now, it is empty. It is bare. There is nothing in there but walls and tacks and bare carpeting and whatnot. We're getting ready for the demolition phase, which is coming up. We're going to be building it back up, reformatting that story to be tell a really wonderful story about the folks that make instruments, how those instruments are connected with us, and then what we do with those instruments. So stay tuned for that. It's an exciting journey we're undergoing right now. We're looking forward to welcoming you back in February, which is why we're doing what we're doing right now, the Mom at Home and then the Live at Mom virtual series. Today, so excited. Again, we started off our 2 weeks of banjo last week with Allison Brown, and we teased you with this week's special guests. We have the entire Deering family here, Jamie, Janet, and Greg. Jamie is the CEO, newly named CEO of Deering Banjo, taking over for founders Janet and Greg. And we have our very own Dr. Jonathan Piper, who will be conducting the interview today. We're going to give you a little brief history, look inside the company, and then kind of where they want to take it in the future and what the outlook of the banjo players, the banjo makers, what that looks like. Are you guys ready?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Welcome, Jamie, Janet, and Greg, and welcome, Jonathan. Take it away.
Thanks, BJ. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. As BJ mentioned, we are doing the very large renovation at the museum, where I've been spending most of my days recently. So I'm very happy to be back at home in my beautifully decorated garage right now. Also, just can't be more pleased to be joined by the Deering family today. San Diego legends, as a member of an old-time music band myself, it's an amazing opportunity to chat with you. The son of a banjo enthusiast, all sorts of reasons why I'm excited about speaking with you today. So welcome, Greg, Janet, and Jamie. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, it's great to be here.
It's our pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. Yeah. So as BJ mentioned, to just hear a little bit about, start with the company, the history of Deering Banjo Company. I'd love to know how you got your start, what motivated you, what possessed you to open up a banjo company, maybe what the state of the banjo is like. Greg, if you can kind of take us back to, when you got it in your head, I am going to be a banjo maker.
Well, I was very fortunate and blessed to grow up in a family environment where I started learning to be a craftsman when I was 2 years old. My dad was an aircraft engineer and taught me to start building flying models, airplane models, when I was 2. Turned me loose to build my first flying scale model when I was 5. Bought me my first set of drafting tools and started teaching me to be a draftsman when I was 7. So I grew up in that environment, but I was also fortunate to be interested in music. I started playing the violin in grade school, played it in the school orchestra all the way through high school. But in 1963, I fell in love with the Kingston Trio. And my best friend had a guitar. I had to get a banjo, and it's haven't looked back since. And fast forwarding, I got more involved in playing the banjo and being out, did a lot of work at church. And then when Janet was still junior high school or early high school, when I was already in college, we happened to have conversation after a youth group meeting one night where, quite independently of each other, we both wanted to have a family business. We weren't boyfriend and girlfriend or anything like that, and she went her way, I went my way, and a few years later we crossed paths, and she called me up one night, and I was the advisor of the high school youth group at church, and she came and joined us at the meeting. And 3 months later, we were engaged.
It didn't take us long. We both had the same goals in life, to make something. I particularly wanted to make something beautiful that would be handed down generation to generation. And he particularly said, hey, I want to make banjos. And I thought, that fits. That's a great idea.
She said, what's a banjo?
Yeah, that's the first thought I had. What was a banjo? Oh, that's the thing I play in church. When I'm not playing the guitar, I'm playing the banjo.
The round
thing, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's so funny.
It's funny you mention that my dad has it's a 1920s Vega in his closet. So those things definitely, they make it down through the generations. So very cool story there. And I'm really curious, when you start making a band, who do you go to for lessons? Who do you study with? How do you start making a banjo?
Well, I made my first banjo in 1969, and I was a biology major at San Diego State University. But my best friend's brother was an industrial arts major, and we would have lunch in their lobby every day. And I was so envious of those shop classes. So without telling my parents, I took a wood shop class, and I built my first banjo. And I learned to build a banjo. First off, my dad had taught me to be a craftsman, how to design things and everything. And I just studied every banjo I could get my hands on and kind of reverse engineered it. And I've still got that first banjo. It's hanging in my office wall. But that was one of those just proverbial being in the right place at the right time. God was shining on me, or however you want to describe it. But there was two other guys in that same class, Sam Radding and Lee Fulmer, that were going to be setting up a shop to build guitars. Took another wood shop class, built a guitar. Sam and Lee were in that class, and they started opening their shop on May of 1970, and they called it the American Dream. And I just showed up when they were getting the key from the landlord and started helping them run wires and build workbenches. And the next thing I know, they let me be part of it.
Yeah.
That's pretty fantastic. And at what point did you decide that you were ready to, proverbially start your own factory, set up from the shop, and open up your own company?
Well, I can be real as brief as I can. At the American Dream, I mainly made banjos and did repair work. I built a few guitars. But the way Sam Radding ran the shop is it was kind of like a co-op. And at the end of every month, we put in 20% of the revenue each one of us had brought in into the co-op, and Sam paid all the bills. And about 1972, I met a young man that was playing the banjo that was still in high school. And he came out to the American Dream and bought some binding and some fret wire and miscellaneous things, and went back to his high school wood shop and built a guitar. It turned out pretty good. When he got out of high school, he started hanging out at the American Dream, and pretty soon Sam put him to work. And that young man's name was Bob Taylor. And Bob Taylor and I were bringing in the lion's share of the revenue, and our 20% were going a long way towards keeping the bills paid. And then when Janet and I got married, Janet had a job in Washington, D.C. for a while, so we left town and moved to Washington, D.C. When we got back, Sam had decided to close the American Dream, and instead of closing it, Bob and his friend Kurt, and at the time they had another partner, bought Sam out and started Taylor Guitars.
Yeah.
And I'll go through this as quickly as I can. So I got back to town and I went to work for Bob and Kurt. And just doing repair work. And it was a little different than the American Dream, because instead of me paying them 20% of what I took in, they paid me 20% of what I took in. And it was, Janet and I were been married for about 10, 11 months and had our brand new baby, our son, Jeremiah. And it was hard to make ends meet. There's a new guy in San Diego that was bringing me old Gibson tenors and having me make 5-string necks for him. And he was selling them. And probably 5 or 6, 7, 8 of them. I built a lot of them for him. And then he started bringing me his own drums that he'd made and had me make necks for him. And at one point he came to me and said, you know, you can make more money if you and I were partners. And he said, let's be partners. So I said, okay. And I quit Taylor Guitars and became partners with, and that was Jeff Stelling. So I set up the Stelling Banjo shop in his garage and started making all the Stelling banjos. And that partnership lasted about 6 months. Jeff didn't want a partner, but he still wanted us to make the banjos. So he asked us to start Deering Banjo Company, and he'd contract us to make the banjos.
Yeah.
Then he bought a shop building, and we rented half the shop building from him.
You could show the photo of my mom doing the resonator.
Yeah.
That was
Sanding the pot.
that's in that factory. That shop.
And our first employee was one of the guys that had been part of the American Dream, a guy named, I just went blank.
Oh, are you talking about Tim Lorank? Or
Tim Lorank.
Yeah.
He was part of one of the American Dream guys. And Tim Lorank was our first employee. And at one point, Tim said, my next door neighbor that I grew up with is an art major at San Diego State, and he's looking for a job. I said, send him on by. I took one look at his artwork and hired him on the spot. And that was the gentleman in the background in that picture with the beard and the long hair.
Yeah.
And that was Larry Breedlove.
Very
So
cool.
he was like our second employee.
Yeah.
Fairly short after that, we hired his brother, Kim, also.
That's amazing.
Yeah. A lot of history.
Like a
in
Yeah,
San
so
Diego.
that's Larry Breedlove in the back. And that lasted, we started Deering Banjos, building Stellings in the summer of 1975. And by the fall of 77, Jeff decided that he didn't want us making the banjos anymore and asked us to vacate his building. So we moved into our garage, which was across the street, and started all over again with our own line of banjos. And most of the guys that had been working for Jeff ended up going to work for Taylor Guitars. Larry Breedlove retired from Taylor Guitars. Tim Lorank retired from Taylor Guitars.
Yeah.
John Gerlach too.
Yeah. But anyway, all of that was kind of like just one spot after another of being in the right place at the right time. You know, if you're vigilant and always reaching for the future and always somewhat aggressive and just passionate about it, for some reason, things like that just keep happening. And it's a blessing. Jan and I real early on, and when we first started Deering Banjo Company, the statistics of new businesses, like 90% of them don't make it through the first year. But we observed that most companies that don't make it got to a set of problems and decided to quit. So Janet and I made a pact with each other that no matter what, we wouldn't quit.
That's right.
And over the years, we've had to rely on that a few times.
We have. There's always a solution. If you don't buy into quitting and you look further and you confront the problem, you usually find a solution.
Yeah.
That's true.
And in the early years, that usually meant working 10, 15, 20 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah. It may not be fun, but you can solve it.
But when it's your passion
Yeah, it becomes.
In the early days too, the kids spent a lot of time at the factory. We had cots set up in the office, and
Yep.
they had a lot of late nights too.
Yeah, they go to bed in the office before we could take them home if we had to work late sometimes.
Yeah.
Just before a festival or before a NAMM show.
So they both grew up in it. Jamie was born in December in 1978 and attended her first NAMM show in January of 1979. She was just 2 months old.
Month old.
It's a month old, yeah, 6 weeks or so.
6
yeah.
weeks. Yeah. There's a photo of that in there. Yeah.
She was our
Oh, yeah.
release that year. I've been visiting dealers selling banjos all over Southern California, and they'd watched my belly grow and grow and grow. And then at the NAMM show, she was our feature.
I've got that picture. Oh, look at that. That's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I don't remember that show, but growing up, having gone a majority of the NAMM shows in my life, there were only a handful of them when I was growing up that I stayed home with my grandmother.
Now that's the picture there is Jamie at the NAMM show in 1979.
Yeah.
That's the one in the winter show in Anaheim. That was back when the NAMM show was still at the Disney Hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kept her in a bassinet under that table. And at one point, I checked on her and I hadn't realized with all the noise from the musical show, I couldn't hear that little baby crying. I looked under there and she was beet red and was screaming at the top of her little tiny lungs. And I didn't put her under the table anymore the rest of the show. Poor little thing.
Luckily, it wasn't traumatizing.
Yeah.
The NAMM show is one of my most calm places, which no one understands. Because it can be very overwhelming of a show if it's your first or second time. But for me, it's always been relaxing in a weird way.
Well, yeah, I mean, NAMM is always considered like a family in and of itself. So, I mean, you were already in that family well before, like, I mean, I've only been going for 20 years now, but you have a lifetime of NAMM shows. That's amazing.
Yeah, and Jamie, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. Having been at the NAMM show your life, been in that family, in that community for so long, to have gone from the company so early on to now being the CEO of the company, what that has meant for you personally and just in terms of the business, how that has supported you.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of that could be a long story as well. It's been an honor to grow up in a family business where I was allowed to be involved. I've had a job most of my life. I got a paycheck and I knew I earned it since a young age. And that experience of understanding what it's like to work and earn your way and get to make your own decisions with that money. When you're 10 and you get a paycheck and go to Toys R Us and buy whatever you want, that is an educational aspect that I have always really valued, because not a lot of kids get that, and they enter the work world at 18 with no understanding of what that process means and the value of it. So I feel lucky that I was given that opportunity and that I had parents that never once made me feel like there was something I couldn't do. Especially as a female, I was never treated like, oh, you can't use that machine or you won't know how to do that. I was taught everything. Like I learned how to sand. How old was I? I refinished my piano teacher's cello in exchange for lessons. And
You're about 10.
10 or 11.
Yeah.
And I spent, a couple Saturdays refinishing it, and it was the best experience. I loved it. And having worked on production a lot, helped in filing, helped at festivals, at NAMM shows. I really got to experience every part of what we do. So it feels like part of me. Yeah. It's not just that I'm stepping into something because it's my name. And I'm glad, because that allows me to really feel like I can guide our team with an understanding of what each position means. And having a mom that's been the CEO, where she didn't let anything stop. I watched them, I know the challenges they went through. I would hear them and be an ear. Like my mom would come home with an issue and she would just start talking to me about it from young teenagehood on, and I would just get to digest it and see how she handled it and really learn that same viewpoint of if you really want something, you just don't let up and you keep figuring it out. And I am grateful for that, for sure. And I try to pass that on to anyone that, you know, I talk to about business. Since taking over CU, I've had a lot of kids that are, you know, coming on to take over for their parents, reach out and ask how we did it. Luckily, we get along really good. So that part hasn't been as big of an issue as some families do have.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate. We have 2 kids. Our son Jeremiah, who lives in Houston, was the contrary in the family. But by contrast, Jamie was the total opposite. So that's always, we've gotten along really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
When she got out of high school, we posted her in the company as my communicator. And that was just heaven for that first summer. But then she decided to go off to school. And I was delighted for her reaching for something, but also disappointed to have lost my communicator.
And you got me back.
But she was gone for a number of years, and when she came back and decided to be part of the company, the brand had grown a lot. And Janet and I got a big kick out of her being so surprised how strong the brand had become.
Yeah, it was interesting in the 90s, being a teenager, going to NAMM shows. You know, I was into, like most, well, not everybody in the 90s, but I was heavy into Pearl Jam and the grunge scene. And that was my style of music. So it was at that time, so far removed from banjo world. It was, you know, different views in school about how cool the banjo was or wasn't. All my friends were mostly musicians or in theater, and so they loved it. They thought it was cool. But it didn't really dawn on me till I got back of, wow, these 2 worlds can actually collide, and they have since then. And that's been huge. Like Eddie Vedder now owns one of our banjos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm curious to know how you witnessed the banjo change. The reception of the banjo, you know, it has dramatically changed since the mid 1800s to now, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
But even in the last couple of decades, it's almost like a different instrument. And I'm curious to know how you have, witnessed that, but also how you feel like you've actively participated in that change.
It's a good question. I can answer that if you want me to. Well, it started with these guys in the late 80s when they invented the crossfire banjo, which is the first fully electric banjo. And that was super revolutionary and allowed the banjo to be played in different styles than were normal at that time. Plus, at the same time, and moving on from there, they never once made someone feel like they couldn't play whatever they wanted on the banjo. It didn't have to fit in a box. And taking the banjo out of that box and allowing people to be creative, you know, from their own, you know, soul, that consistency of a message has produced what you see for the banjo now, because we still get people thanking us for sharing stuff that isn't traditional. They want the traditional. Everyone that, you know, we work with Mumford & Sons, who are amazing human beings, and what they've done for the banjo, they're just one of several that have really taken it out of that box. And we get kids in the showroom when we were allowed to have people in the building, but who would come in and play a Mumford & Sons song on the banjo and then turn around and play an Earl Scruggs song.
Uh-huh.
It was so cool to see that full circle happening of, no, it's all music. So I would say that progress of more and more musicians feeling the freedom to pick it up and express themselves is what has brought it out of that box and helped it grow. And I feel like that's happening even more right now.
One of my main motivations in designing and building so many different models we have is we build what our customers ask us for.
Yeah.
And because of that, you know, Jamie talks to, you know, there are all kinds of different boxes, you know. We build banjos for every box. And we're still building new kinds of banjos.
Yeah.
Every time a customer says, can you do this? if it's at all feasible, we will do that.
Yeah.
But it's always been, what do the customers need and want? That's what's driven our company, always being willing to fill whatever need there is.
Yeah.
It drives our production manager and our operations manager crazy because we have way too many models.
We have so many models.
Yeah.
That's the biggest challenge, is staying on top of all the different specs.
Speaking of outside the box, one of our questions is from Brian, and he says, was there ever a design for a 9-string or a 10-string banjo, like a 12-string guitar?
Well, we have made a lot of 12-string banjos.
Yeah.
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 We've got a gold album on our showroom wall from Joe Satriani using one on one of his albums.
The Extremist.
Yeah.
The Extremist
Yeah.
album.
Yeah.
I have made a 7-string and a 9-string, but they were one-of-a-kinds. We don't do very many one-of-a-kinds like that now, but back in the early days, I could be persuaded to do a lot of different things.
Yeah, every now and then we'll get those requests, but they're not very common nowadays. Yeah, it's an interesting idea.
Yeah. Very cool.
Cool.
I'm curious to know, since you mentioned this extensive lineup of new models and all these artists that you're working with, was that a conscious decision to bring on artists to kind of do these custom models? Or was that just like from the day you launched, people were coming to you asking for your banjos?
Like, as far as who's playing them?
Yeah, so like a lot of companies do artist models, like special kinds of instruments for artists, and then bring that into the lineup. Some companies try to avoid the artist feel, but it seems like with the Dropkick Murphys model, the Mumford & Sons model, you've kind of embraced that. And I'm wondering if that was something that you had always set out to do. If there was a moment where you changed your minds and said, okay, we need to do artist models. How did that come about?
I can answer that. Well, early on, and pretty much every time, it's been because the artist has a specific need that they really are reaching for, and we are excited to make it for them. It started earlier with David Holt, who is an expert on old-time banjo and a fantastic old-time player. He wanted a deeper pot to go along with that traditional old-time sound, and they worked with him. I was very young back then, but I remember him coming to visit. He's a wonderful man.
But David Holt initially came to us.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of kinship with David Holt because he grew up in Orange County. He was a California guy.
Yeah.
So even though he lives in North Carolina now, he always felt a sort of kinship. And whenever they were out visiting folks, the four of us, Janet and I and our 2 kids, and David Holt and their kids, we'd all go to Disneyland together. So most of the time when we have a relationship with an artist, it becomes one of not a business relationship, it becomes a friendship.
Yeah.
But each artist can bring a whole genre with them of people who love their music and want to play something like it. So when they represent that and it's a good idea, it fills a niche in the market, then we tie it in with them and we make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and they get a royalty, and we work together, and it helps them, it helps their fans, it helps the banjo have, take on new legs. And so it's really a fun process. When we did it with Dropkick, Jeff was so excited to design it. The whole band got to approve the inlay pattern, and he loved it because it was a lighter weight model. So he jumps around so much on stage and has it plugged in, so it made everything easier. And then Winston with his amplification setup is pretty extensive, and we simplified it a lot for him, where his banjo can really go through all the paces that their variety of songs need. And then John Hartford, he'd been trying to get a light, wood tone ring banjo made how he wanted it for a long time, and they finally went through all the different variations it could be.
Yeah, I made at least 9 different wood tone drums assemblies before we hit on the one that he liked the best.
Yeah.
But when we finally launched that, it was a wooden tone ring, and we was totally against what the norm was. Everybody wanted a bell bronze tone ring, and they would judge a banjo. If you pick it up and it's heavy, then it's got to be a good banjo.
The
Well,
opposite
John
now.
Hartford's was a lightweight banjo, completely different way of looking at it. And in the beginning, we watched how you change a market. You present it. And then I found if I just said, what do you think of this? And handed it to somebody and did not tell them what it was, then they could react to not their preconceived ideas. They could try that instrument and go, I like this. And it sounds this way or sounds that way. And then I'd tell them it has a wooden tone ring. And then they'd be amazed. And they'd run around telling everybody, I can't believe it. So sometimes you have to present an idea to a market and let people experience it before they get into their preconceived ideas.
Yeah.
And then find out they like it, and you can open up a whole new idea to people that they might not otherwise even consider.
Well, an example of that is our Crossfire electric banjo. When I designed that, nobody asked me for it. I just kept running into 5-string banjo players playing electric guitar in a country band or a rock band because they couldn't get their banjo to function in that loud environment. So I built an instrument that they could use in that environment. And the first couple of NAMM shows we took that instrument to, the dealers thought I was the devil, bringing something evil and awful to their sacred banjo world. But when people like Bela Fleck and Roy Clark started playing them on a regular basis, that all went away.
Right. But people would come into our show, our display, and they'd look at the Crossfire and they'd go like this and they'd back away from it. And it was funny because, as the maker, you would think I'd be offended, but I thought, no, everybody who has that much of a reaction to it, even if it's a negative reaction, it shows interest. So I caught on pretty quickly that I just take it and say, I'd talk them into holding it and trying it with headphones on. So nobody could hear but them. And I'd show them what all the controls did. And I'd find that those were my hottest customers, those who rejected it the most. Usually, if I sat them down and let them have an hour with it and left them alone, they'd love it and they'd go on telling everybody how great it was. So, you can't always assume if they hate it that they're not going to love it once they try it.
Oh, that's so funny.
Right, you just got to steer that passion in the right direction.
That's right.
Yeah. I do have the original prototype, and this is my office that we're in that's also sort of like a museum room. I have the prototype if you want to see it.
Ooh, yeah.
It's quite 80s.
Yeah, the original prototype's not the same as what we ended up, but it was my first attempt.
Yeah. Oh, that was a funny thing. We took that to the NAMM show as just, hey, we're trying. And we showed it and we all stood around and laughed at it the whole show because it was so absurd, but it was an attempt.
It's the most amazing thing you've ever seen.
That's awesome.
It's got the guitar pick. It's full on.
We made the body like a resonator, taking the, kind of,
Yeah. So
it fits on.
it's the actual drum. It's not solid through, but yeah.
Wow.
After this failed utterly, then we came and rethought it and came out with the idea that we were able to patent that actually made it work. But if we hadn't tried that, we wouldn't have thought of, well, what do you have to solve to make it work?
Yeah.
So the next year before NAMM, I came to the shop and said, guys, we got to figure this out. And by golly, one of our guys came up with a concept and Greg ran with it and made it work. It was fantastic.
Wow.
Such a great story. I love showing people that. They get a big kick out of it.
Yeah.
I've seen the production Crossfires, and that one is still kind of surprising.
Yeah. We haven't made any, we discontinued them a few years ago because the Cabanjo pickup made it to where any banjo can become stage worthy, which made the need for the Crossfire less. And because we weren't making as many, it was they took twice as long to do one at a time. Yeah. So we discontinued them, and now they're becoming a collector's item. And I keep getting artists like, "Are you sure I can't get one?" So we'll see if there's going to be a next generation because they're sought after now. It's really quite fun to see it.
It's funny too because Mr. Bill, one of our employees here at the Museum of Making Music, he's in the chat and he's like, I want that.
I love it. I especially love the yellow. That's
awesome.
Another example of how so many things have just fallen on our laps is when I was 13, and fell in love with the banjo. The banjo that I wanted was the one that the Kingston Trio played, was the Vega Pete Seeger model.
Yeah.
But in 1963, it was over $400. And I mean, a new car was $600-700 back then. And a 13-year-old kid wasn't going to be buying that.
No.
And fast forward into the future, we had got the opportunity to own the Vega Banjo Company. So now we're the ones making the Pete Seeger banjo.
The long necks, yeah.
What does that mean to you, Greg, just kind of on a personal level? What does that mean to you to be the steward of the Vega brand?
It's hard to put into words. It's beyond my wildest dreams. I mean, I went through so many years not being able to have the banjo of my dreams, and now I have the banjo of my dreams. We're building a special one right now for a Kingston Trio fan. It's going to be an engraved and chrome-plated tubaphone pot with a long neck with the theme of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea on it.
It's a work of art.
Wow.
I've been working on that banjo for 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very intricate inlays.
Getting close to having it done.
Very.
Amazing.
Yeah. For me, like I've learned a lot about the banjo world over my life, and to know the history of the Vega Banjo Company and how much of an important part of the banjo growth and changing that it was, to me, I'm stoked that we're keeping it alive, because it wasn't being made for several years. That's when we got it. So to bring it back and keep the tradition going I find that wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, the brand had also gone to a Korean company, and we were delighted to get it back to the United States.
Yeah.
It was a shame to see so many of the old banjo brands go to be made in China. So it's nice the Vega, we were able to keep it in the United States and make it ourselves.
Yeah.
And the American Banjo Museum is a wonderful resource for people who want to see all the history of the banjo.
Yeah.
It's in Oklahoma City, down in Bricktown in the downtown area. It's just the best banjo museum. If anybody has a chance to go by and see it, it's worth a trip.
Yeah, what they've found that they've gotten in that museum is wow. Didn't know they made banjos like that 100 years ago. It's wonderful.
Yes.
Well, it's interesting too, because I think some of when we did the banjo exhibit a couple of years back, and you guys supplied the workbench and a lot of the components where people could put together a banjo and see what that was like. I think we actually had a couple of their collection on display here. So yeah,
I believe so. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a really fun exhibit.
Yeah.
So I wanted to check in, BJ, see if we have any viewer questions piling up, or if we change it.
Well, I have one I was going to save for just a little bit later. It was kind of like, it was a nice end cap question, so I'm holding on to it. It's in my pocket, and I'll share it with you guys when it comes around.
Okay, well, I have a question. So, coming back to that Vega banjo, you said costs $400.
Yeah.
In the 60s, and now you're making the Goodtime banjo, which isn't a whole lot more than that, now here in 2020. And I'm wondering how the heck, how do you come to, find that price point, meet that price point, meet the quality at that price point, and what it means for you as a family, as a company, to be able to supply that product to a marketplace that clearly is eating it up.
Well, my motivation has always been to build the banjo that I could have afforded when I was 13.
Yeah.
No matter what we've done, no matter how many high-end banjos we've made, I've always been trying to get something there that is affordable for anybody that just can't spend a lot of money on a banjo. Fortunately, with the upbringing I had and all the things that my dad taught me, I was able to design and build all the tooling for that banjo myself.
Yeah.
When I figured out how to do the finger joint peg head, when I figured out how to make the mold to make the drums, that made it possible. We were not in a position where we had the capital to go out and hire somebody to do that for us. So it was one of those things that basically seemed impossible, but I just grabbed a hold of it. And from from when I first did the first prototype of the Goodtime to where when we actually had it on the market was 10 years. Now I've got another banjo that we have a
That
patent
we don't
on.
want to go into too much.
Well,
gonna
let's
wear
put
my-
it this way. I'm not done making affordable banjos. There's more on the way.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but the Goodtime, I remember when that got released in 1996 and first taking it around to festivals because I used to help do some festivals back then, and the response was really appreciated. That it was a well-built banjo. It sounded good.
And and a real quick little story, a little side story on this to tell you how much of a family the music business is. Richard Kelson is the founder and the owner of Saga Music, and was importing banjos from Japan and then China and stuff. We're good friends. And at the NAMM show for years, he would come to me and say, now, Greg, says, we really need a good, inexpensive American-made banjo. And I'd say, yeah, we do. And Richard would go, you know, you're the only one that can do it. And I said, yeah, Richard, I know. I'm working on it. And he would say that to me year after year after year. And when we finally got on the market, Richard comes over and goes, good job.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Nice.
That's awesome.
And people would come up to see the Good Times when they first came out, and they had this same idea that everything had to be heavy to be good. And they'd walk up and they'd heard it was a good banjo, and they'd pick up a Good Time, and it would be so funny because they'd go to pick it up and then they'd go like this. And it'd be like, how did you do that? It's so light. And they'd play it and they say, this is fantastic. And what it was we looked at everything that it took to make a good banjo that wasn't, you know, necessarily all the metal. It was, what could you, if you left all the unnecessary things off and you just made the banjo itself and gave it only what it had to have, what is that? So that's what you got in a Good Time. But the lightweight was great for travel. There's all these other benefits.
Kids,
and then we proved
yeah.
to the world that a lightweight banjo can have a great tone, because it does. It has a terrific tone.
I also have to give a shout out and a great deal of credit to Leo Fender, because the Good Time has a maple fingerboard, and without the Stratocaster and the Telecaster having already been out there, that maple fingerboard would have been a hard sell. So hats off to Leo also.
Yeah. That's very true. Wow. And since then, I mean, that line has made it affordable for people who are curious about playing to not feel like they're overspending to learn something that's new and not necessarily challenging, but if you've not played music, picking up any instrument, it's a little daunting.
Plus,
Yeah.
the Good Time banjo, as soon as you get out of some of the traditional areas where a banjo has to be a certain way, the Good Time in a lot of genres actually functions on a very professional level.
Like the punk world.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of punk bands play with our Good Times because they're super lightweight and they can jump around and not worry about sweating all over.
Well, Adele made a video a number of years ago singing a song in front of a symphony.
Yeah.
And Janet got to see this video and she says, wouldn't it be cool if you used a banjo? And the next song was one of our Good Times.
It was
in
a
front
good
of the
time in the
symphony.
video, in the symphony. It was like, wow, how about that?
Wow.
I have a wish, and there it is on the next song.
Yeah. It's been wild seeing where it goes and the accessibility of it. And that's where one that started out with one version, open back Good Time. Pretty soon, of course, 1 million people asked for a resonator on it. So that model came out. Now we have 60 or 80 versions of the Good Time.
You gotta have left-handed.
Left-handed for all of them, tenors, plectrums, ukuleles. Yeah, it's it's all the things that the customers want and need, and they all have a life of their own. So we keep making them.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
I do have a couple audience questions here, if you don't mind me bringing them in here. And actually, there's Josh D'Amigo. Oh, Josh.
Oh, hey, Josh.
Hey, Josh. Good to see you. He's on Facebook. So.
Nice.
Cool.
Let's see. Brian asks, what was the most unique material you have used for the drum?
Well,
For the drum, probably the
Like the skin or the wood?
I'm gonna guess the skin, or maybe just overall components? Like if there's a combination of components that are just like wild out there, if that's just in your mind like the most unique you've ever put together.
Well, the most unique thing with the drum, most of the drums are maple. We now make a lot of banjos where the drums are made out of white oak, which is not something we saw coming, but it's extremely good tone wood.
Yeah.
We've done some very exotic tone rings in doing research and development for, along with Jens Kruger, one of our top artists, who's also knows all the acoustic science behind things like musical instruments. And we've done high lead, low lead, all kinds of different brass alloys. We've done a pure copper tone ring, and we're just constantly doing new things in that respect. One of the things that was probably the most unique is we had a customer bring us some, we didn't make the drum out of it, but we made the neck and the resonator out of it. He brought us some pink ivory.
Yeah, I remember that.
And pink ivory is a wood from Africa that is, it's part of their culture and their tradition, and it's generally considered a capital offense to cut down a pink ivory tree. The only time a branch would be taken was in particular tribes in this part of their culture. When a young man would move from childhood to adulthood, he would get a walking stave out of pink ivory that he'd have with him the rest of his life. Well, when they built the big dam in Africa, the big lake flooded a number of those trees, and they allowed them to be harvested. And the gentleman we built it brought me this billet big enough to make one neck, and I had to let it age for a while. And when I finally started making the neck out of it, I got the neck cut out and got it made. And I was glad that he hadn't told me how much he paid for that piece of wood. That piece of wood, for one banjo neck, he spent over $4,000 on.
Wow.
Geez.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it didn't crack. It came out great, but that wood is known for cracking. So usually they only make like knife handles out of it or smaller things. So to make a whole banjo, when the banjo came out beautiful, no cracks or anything, we were really pleased.
It was meant
It's
to
a
be.
one of a kind. But another thing about the drum is the Torre company had us build the carbon fiber banjos when they were opening up a plant, carbon fiber plant in Alabama, since they were having a grand opening ceremony. And there's the old song, you know, I came from Alabama with a banjo on my knee. They wanted 6 banjos out of carbon fiber.
Wow.
So we made 6 carbon fiber banjos. They gave one to the governor and one to different
The
people.
mayor and different people. But they even had the head out of carbon fiber. Everything, the drum was coated with it. The neck was
the
coated with
head.
it. We did this entire black banjo with carbon fiber. And that was probably one of the most unique things we've
But
ever
that
done.
was a one-time deal. We didn't
Yeah, it
go
was
into
one time
production
deal.
on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that
And every
sound
now
good?
and then, very rarely, someone will send in a piece of skin that they want us to put on. I think we've only done that a couple of times. I think Chad did the last one. And skin is very, very temperamental and hard to have as a head. So most people prefer like the Remo heads because they will last. But yeah, not a lot of unusual skins.
No, Remo was nice enough to take that carbon fiber and make us some heads for those 6 Torre banjos.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Remo's
we
great.
really love those guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun question.
Yeah.
I've got one more. It's related to tone ring. Alan says he practices on a Goodtime Artisan and gigs with the Deering Eagle too. I see he wants me to ask about the story behind the 2010 tone ring on the Eagle 2, as it really makes it sound good.
Well, that's a really fun story. Jens Kruger and their sound man at the time, Philip Zanin, who's a brilliant engineer, got a hold of some computer software where you could draw any kind of part you wanted to into the computer and define the alloy or the chemical composition of that. And then you could interject vibration, different frequencies into that software, and it would evaluate how that piece would react. And they modeled in our tone ring, which is typically like the old flathead Gibson tone ring.
Yeah.
And they were surprised to find out that when whatever frequency they put in, the overtone frequencies that came out were all out of harmony with the input note, which was a curiosity. So Jens came to me with a hypothesis or the question, I wonder if it's possible to make a ring where the overtones are in harmony with the input note. So we spent 2-3 years just going after every possible different configuration. I made dozens of different tone rings.
Yeah.
Some of them were better, some of them were awful. And the one we finally set on was what turned into the 2010 tone ring. And one of the interesting things about it is not only are all the harmony notes in harmony with whatever frequencies put into it, but one of the things that Jens learned as a young child getting to spend time with a master violin maker is that the most important notes in the violin are ones you can't hear. And when you see a picture of a violin maker holding a top and tapping on it, he said, the picture is always them listening. And Jens says, the notes that are important aren't the ones they can hear with their ears. When you have overtones that are below the human hearing range, it makes the notes you can hear sweeter. And Jens we were in his studio and he put some Mozart on and pulled out all the low frequencies and the whole thing got thin. Put the low frequencies back in and everything got rich. The best Gibson style tone ring approaches an octave below. A really good violin has a full octave below what you can hear in overtones. A really great violin goes 2 octaves below what you can hear. And our normal, like our 06 tone ring, approaches an octave. But we were surprised, but not surprised. The 2010 run has overtones that go a full 2 octaves. So it really does make all the notes sweet.
Yeah.
And that was a real fun project because we were blazing new territory, just wondering if something better might be possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a side benefit is we're able to make them in-house. So we were able to make it fairly affordable
Yeah.
for the players.
Very cool.
Yeah, but it's a different sound. It's not your traditional bluegrass sound. It's a new sound. So we've kind of brought it into our line and let people try both. Some people like the traditional sound much better. Some people really love this sound, but it's growing and the popularity has really come a long way.
Well, one of the things too about the 2010 tone ring in comparison to the 06 style tone ring is 06s are mainly a bluegrass tone ring. They're used a little bit in Dixieland, but not much. But the 2010 tone ring works extremely well as a bluegrass tone ring. It works extremely well as a clawhammer open back tone ring, and it works extremely well as a jazz Dixieland tone ring. It crosses all the genres.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And an amazing answer. Thank you for that.
Nice.
I'm losing your camera. Where are you going?
That's awesome. Oh, that's great.
Back. So I'm curious, given that manufacturer has, I'm assuming, slowed down a little bit in the last few months, how have you all been keeping busy?
I can answer that. I mean, like the rest of the world, it hit us, suddenly, and we did have to furlough the majority of our staff for a little while, and that was the hardest thing we've ever had to do. We worked really hard. There was a small team of us that could mainly work from home that stayed on to keep the important things going, and it was definitely a challenge. But there were people that had always wanted to learn music and took the time to start. And so luckily we had some already built instruments that we didn't get to ship before that. So one of our VPs came in by himself and was fulfilling some orders during that time to keep people able to carry on. And that was really heartening to be able to provide that. We were able to take care of our crew and bring everyone back when California reopened, and that was huge to be at a place where we could do that. And still we're rolling. It's been challenging, to say the least. I have become an expert in disinfecting. I'm personally, after everyone goes home, I do the rounds to make sure it's done. Never thought I'd be good at that. I've been, following a lot more medical education than I ever thought I would, but it's important right now.
Well, I would add that when all of this COVID-19 stuff hit and the lockdown hit, it was traumatic, and dealing with it and enabling us to actually comply with all the protocol to have the crew back when manufacturing was allowed to open was such an immense and intense amount of regulation. I don't think Janet and I could have handled it.
Yeah, we're glad that Jamie was here to
Jamie has
spearhead it.
got way more capacity for that than we do. And without her being at the helm, I don't think we would have reopened, at least not effectively.
Well, thanks.
We're extremely grateful for her capacity to jump through all of those hoops. The amount of protocol we have to maintain on a moment to moment, hour to hour, everyday basis is immense.
Yeah.
And she's on top of every bit of it.
Thanks.
Yeah, we split out our workbenches, made sure everybody was more than 6 feet apart. Luckily, there were only 3 or 4 places that weren't.
Yeah, so we're the way we're situated, we already were pretty much socially distanced everywhere. There were just a couple we had to change, and then the tape to where everyone knew the parameters. And when everyone came back, we got masks made by a friend of one of our VPs, and provided personal hand sanitizer. We really wanted to make it feel safe and cover every base we could. The biggest challenge now is our inventory line. Every part of the world is going through the challenge, and I know we're not the only ones having to deal with that, but we are doing our damnedest to stay on top of it and work together. We're all in the same boat, so being really understanding and ahead of the curve, to not have, like the storm in the East Coast. Out of the blue, one of our vendors hasn't had power for a week, and we need those parts. We're handling it. It's like my motto right now is every day is a new day.
Yes. Take it as it comes.
Take every challenge. And so far we've been on it enough that it hasn't stopped us. So I can say, if you keep your mind focused on the future and what you want to see in the future rather than all the turmoil, that's what you'll get more so. Because it's really easy right now to go down the hole. And you have to put extra effort into staying with your focus on what you want to see. And not just for us, like we've been doing that with the community since day one, when we started getting a lot of customer service calls and questions because people were taking their banjos out for the first time in years, and because they were home, something to do. So they'd call and ask, well, how do I handle this issue? My banjo sounds like this and it didn't used to, all those technical things which we would normally answer, at festivals and things like that. Well, those aren't here right now, or they bring their banjo here. So Chad and I started doing our tech lives once a week, where he would sit and answer all the technical questions he possibly could on Facebook and Instagram Live. And that was so fun to provide something for everyone stuck at home that they have been trying to figure out. We miss it. Like being able to connect with the community in that way and provide a service where we don't get to see them in person like we normally would was really nice. So
we are truly missing the face-to-face festivals. It's we're looking forward to when the festivals can come back.
Yeah. We've been in touch, like all of them are planning on next year, and we've already put in our yes, we will be there. So as long as they happen, we will be there.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, there's also some virtual ones happening, like IBMA, the International Bluegrass Music Association. They're putting together a fantastic online platform. I'm super curious to see how it pans out, because what they're putting together sounds like something that even when we're back in person should still happen, because it allows it to hit more people, you know, in accessibility, no matter, you know, if it's in person or not, which that's huge when you think about an event like IBMA that's international, but not everyone can travel to it. So, yeah.
That's I mean, it rings true. We had an early episode on a Mama Home where we talked about the history of a lot of these, you know, it comes in waves, and we came upon the term called chrysotunity, you know, where depending on what happens, it's right now with everything that's going on, we find that music has become a connective force, and
Absolutely.
now we have the opportunity to figure out how do we connect through music. And I mean, with your passion, the passion of the Deering Banjo Company, and you know, I'm not too concerned about the future, because you know, we share that passion, and the passion, people are so passionate about connecting through music, be it in person or now virtually, you know, and
virtual, yeah.
We continue.
And MoMM's done a lot of work with the local research centers about the therapy of music, and that it is a therapy in itself. And I think a lot of people are finding that now. So for us, knowing that research, it's also just as important, because we all need some joy at home.
Yep.
Yes.
And if we can help provide that, and the community that's attached to it, then I consider that's our gift to help everyone carry on.
Yep. And I think afterward, this is, you know, whatever that looks like afterwards, we're going to have that. We're going to have these lessons already in place, and we're going to carry it on for us in the future to make it better. So, all right, I got one more question. I know we're at the top of the hour, so I promise you, I was holding on to this one, and I don't know, it might be a loaded question, so forgive me. It's kind of tongue in cheek. So, Brian asked, let me see, I have to scroll up to find it. I apologize. Okay, where is it? Okay, Brian asks, of the three of you, who is the best in all caps, banjo player? Fight.
All right. That's an easy one, actually. He's definitely played we can all play some. I don't play in front of most people, but if you see me at a festival by myself, like during a lull, I'm usually sitting there playing on a Vega #2. That's my favorite one to play.
I don't have much haven't heard her play, Jamie play much at all. So Janet will sit and play in the living room, and once in a while I'll fall asleep in the evening getting to hear her banjo music, or I'll wake up in the morning to her banjo music.
Wow.
Aww, but I'm shy.
She won't much play in front of an audience at all, but she knows quite a few tunes.
She does. Yeah, she played a lot.
I kept you up at night when you were little.
You both did.
Playing the banjo.
That's an amazing journey from what's the banjo to playing at home, playing all those tunes. That's a really wonderful journey.
Yeah, it is.
It is. Yeah.
And thank goodness for the internet and the lessons on the internet.
Oh my gosh,
so many people have been able to learn all about the banjo, whereas before the internet, it was this mysterious instrument nobody knew anything about. And now it's really accessible.
And I would like to do a plug here real quick.
Yeah.
Because now is also a super unique time for anyone wanting to learn or get better at a certain style. A lot of musicians are not on the road, and they're accessible right now. And a lot of the banjo players are doing lessons. So if you can find them online and see if they're doing lessons, this is a rare opportunity to connect on that level, and it helps them while they're not able to tour and do shows. I just want to put that out there for anyone that may not have realized they could take that opportunity and help the community and help, you know, get to learn something fun. So.
Even our top Sam, who does all our in-house repair work, he's a really good musician. And when the lockdown hit and he had to stay home, he started doing lessons online.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of really good musicians out there that don't have their regular income that can really use the help of doing lessons online.
Yeah, all over the world. literally. Yeah.
I told everybody that jug teacher available right here, and my phone is not ringing off the hook. I don't know what's going on.
Really?
Should sign up on our teacher locator page.
Yeah, we have a locator page on our website.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
perfect.
have a jug category on there?
Yeah, we get a lot of calls on how to find a banjo teacher. So we made this page where anyone can sign up, and then you can find a teacher all over the world. Yeah, that's been really productive in connecting people.
Yeah, and teachers can just enter themselves, just put their information in there and connect that way.
Yeah.
And they don't have to play just a Deering Banjo to be on the page.
Right.
Yeah, they can
That's
play
true.
any kind of banjo.
What they do have to play is the banjo.
Yes,
Yeah.
of any style. Yes. Oh, that's great.
Awesome. All right. Well, Janet, Greg, Jamie, thank you so much for joining us today. We're already past the top of the hour, and I think we had a really great discussion with everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Got to learn so much. Had some really great questions from the audience, and other than that, man, what a great time. What a great time learning.
Yeah,
It's been fun.
appreciate it. This was
Yeah.
really fun.
This was great.
Okay. Well, with that. Everyone out there on Mom at Home episode land watching live, thank you for participating today. Thank you for everybody who's out there expressing that they're banjo players, learning banjo players. Great resource. Go to the Deering website, look up some banjo artists that you can take lessons from. Grab a banjo. Have fun. Other than that, like I said, we do have a live virtual concert happening at the Museum of Making Music tonight, which is where I am with all of our renovation chaos happening behind me, so I apologize for the knickknacks in the background. You can purchase tickets to that virtual concert. Go to museumofmakingmusic.org. Well, that's Michael Kennedy and friends tonight. Really fantastic bass player. He's going to be jamming here tonight. All socially distanced, far away from each other. Next week, we have from Mom at Home episode. I don't know what episode number we're on. We're coming in on about 50 now, so I know we've done quite a few episodes. Don Lewis. Don Lewis is the inventor, innovator, electrical engineer, vocalist, multi-instrumentalist, the man behind the live electronic orchestra. There's only one of them in existence, and this is a pre-MIDI instrument. He's going to be talking about his history with synthesizers. He's actually had quite an astounding career, so we're going to learn a lot about that. And then the following week, I think, I know in August we have, at the end of the month, John Anderson from Yes, vocalist from Yes. So he'll be here joining us, and we'll learn about that. But you can find all of our upcoming episodes on our website, museumofmakingmusic.org. Check it out. And until then, everyone, thank you for joining us, and take care.